The next thing that I'm going to practice while I'm doing this is tree patterns. I've mixed a little bit of blue into the color that I used for my cattails just to differentiate it. Blue is a little duller than green, it's a little further away. And I'm using that same brush, but what I'm doing is I'm creating the tall tops of pine trees. And I'm imagining how the land rolls underneath them, lifting up into hills and coming down again. So this is what I'm going to do on the far shore of the lake. So practice this a little bit. See what you can come up with as far as how you create just a little bit of texture, and it looks like treetops in the distance. There's not a lot of detail in these. It's just little marks of the brush. If I go back over it, I can make it lighter. I can add more texture by moving that paint around. This will work for daytime trees too. Keep it very, very dark for this sunset scene. And you can see that little bit of blue is creating kind of a deep blue-green, azure or turquoise. Instead of just the green that we used over here, it comes across as much cooler. So practice that as well, and then we're going to go straight on to doing that in the background here. So I'm going to add a little bit more blue here, make sure I've got plenty of that color mixed up, get it really dark. And then I'm going to dry this corner because there's still quite a bit of water there and I don't want this running up into my sky. And of course it does, so I'm going to dry it a little bit more. Now you'll notice if I have that water running in the wet on wet technique, it gives it a looser, more watercolory feel. I'm going to follow my pencil line all the way down here, and then I'm going to come back up to this other side, making these slightly smaller because I'd like them to look further away. And I'm varying the height of the trees. I'm also thinking about covering up my pencil lines, so if they're showing a little bit in that red, I'm going to make sure that I get some of this really dark blue-green underneath it. And then I'm going to make sure also that I don't have any white paper showing there. So that gives me a nice horizon line. I'd like to vary it just a little bit more with some ups and downs that look like the land underneath is lifting those trees up a little bit here and maybe here. And then I'm going to come down, I'm going to overlap these guys a little bit. Making sure that everything is covered with color here. So I don't have any white spots sticking out because this is going to be very dark. I'm going to continue that all the way down to the shoreline over here, making a little quicker work of it as I come right over here with some extra water, mixing more blue into that. And again, thinking about the shape of the land underneath the trees. If I were to walk a trail on this hillside, when would I go up? When would I go down? And remembering where that original line was, because I want to emphasize the difference in front of where I drew my pencil line and behind, and just kind of keep this looking like a line, even though I'm breaking it up with all of my brush marks representing trees. Getting a little bit lighter near the shore because there's not as many trees there, and so it doesn't get dark as quickly. And then I'm going to add the same thing on this last hill, but it's going to be even larger. And the other thing that I've noticed with the trees here is there tends to be a little more light behind them when they're this close. So I'm going to add my trees here. I'm using more of the technique we used in class, where I'm doing some individual branches and giving them a little more detail in life than I did with those background trees. And then I'm going to take the top of my hill like that. As I come down here to the shore, I'm going to let that texture go completely and have kind of a light shoreline that I can work with later. If my paint starts doing dry brush like that, I know I'm going to need more water. And you can see where it's a little more brown here. I'm going to add some blue to that. Covering everything up, leaving some light stuff near the shoreline so that I've got room to work later. And then coming back with more tree shapes. I'm just about out of paint there. Even using my tube paint and mixing that whole well full, it doesn't last all the way through. And the trees generally end a little bit before the shoreline. So I'm going to go ahead and let them do that in my painting as well. So now we've got the far shore done. We're going to start thinking about the front shore in our next video.